Hi everyone, thanks for coming to the webinar today. We're just going to wait a few minutes as attendees roll in to listen up. Yeah. All right. Oh, never mind though. Let's wait a few more minutes. Got some more people coming in. Thank you again, everyone, for coming in either early in the morning, mid-morning, or on your lunch break, depending on your time zone. Really appreciate you being here. Okay, I think we'll get started. So first of all, I'm going to introduce the Nissan LEAF team and thank them for being here. Heather Clark will be our presenter today, and as I said, she's from the Nissan LEAF team. She's going to give you all the details you need to know about putting on a ride and drive experience. We'll also have a couple guest speakers who will talk about how to give ride along. It's an often overlooked part of events, but you know, when you can't do a full-on test drive for people, a ride-along is also a great way to get people in an EV. And so you'll hear about that today as well. Go ahead and take it away, Heather.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you guys for attending. So we just wanted to give a little high-level overview of how to conduct a successful ride and drive. And how to interact with dealers. So I hope this is beneficial. And if you guys have any questions, if you don't mind, if you'll save them to the end or submit them through, that would be great. And then we'll address those when we're done. If you want to go ahead into the next slide for me, please. So in preparation of your event, you're obviously know if you guys have space or not, if you're going to hold a ride and drive, but what you'll need to do best is to determine a contact at each OEM that you are reaching out to, requesting to bring cars for the ride and drive. They suggest ideally 6 weeks in advance to give them time to plan and get the resources in line. And then contact that representative directly. They will help you plan through every logistical piece of that component for your specific location. Go to the next slide, please. So there is some paperwork that is required. There's test drive waivers. Each OEM will likely require a liability waiver from each test drive participant. So that would be coming from the OEM directly. If there are dealers that are there, you will have to work with the city and the current location that you are like having the event at to cover any of their liability requirements as well. But you guys can work through that. Every place is going to be different, so it's not black and white of something I can tell you exactly how it's going to net out. But those would be your key contacts to understand what is required. There will also be insurance liability certificates that could be required. Again, it's depending on where the event's being held. So definitely talk to the city and to that location venue to confirm if that's required. Next slide, please. So you'll also want to come up with a predetermined test drive route, ideally no more than 1 to 2 miles in length, consist of right turns only, just to keep things simple and less risks of issues occurring, having an accident or anything, and create a map to give the participants and organizers so they understand where they're going. People will come from all over to a lot of events and may not be too familiar with the current area and location that the event is being held at. And then ensure that all test drive organizers are familiar with the route, like I said, prior to them getting in the car and driving, instead of trying to figure out where they're going so much they can actually enjoy driving the vehicle that they are driving and getting to enjoy that experience driving it. If you'll go ahead to the next slide, please. So during the day of the event, there will be on-site test drives. So there's going to be typically a sign-up booth. So we're working with some city captains ourselves for some of the events that we're attending, where they're going to have one general sign-up booth for all cars that are test driven. Some are going to be literally by a station is going to be for each OEM. So they're all different. So as you guys are organizing your events, make sure that's very clear. So the dealers, the OEMs, and the people who are bringing their cars understand what the flow is, what the process is, who's covering what liability, and who needs to have what based on the needs of that specific event venue. And then they'll have to have a valid driver's license and insurance. Just as if you were going to a dealership and needing to test drive a car, you have to show that to them before getting into the vehicle. And list of the vehicles that will be available for the test drives that day. So a lot of people come up and ask like, hey, what can I drive? You can give them the options. Maybe they'll drive all of them. Maybe they'll just only interested in one or two. So at least that allows them to understand what is available. Next slide, please. Also, again, staging area for the vehicles. Some locations that I've talked to, they will have the OEM or a dealer will have a little, like maybe a 10 by 10 tent or a table or something within the main area of the event. And then due to just how the location's set up in the roads, the test drive location might be a block or two away. So we want to make sure there's directional signs, but then there's an obvious stage or place, whether it's another like 10 by 10 or something, so everybody knows as they're walking there that that's where they need to be, and they don't get lost walking around. Some places will have it literally right by that person's table. You can literally get in a car and just go from there. So again, each location is different based on how the area is set up. There are dedicated lines for each vehicle. So you have 1 to 2 people checking IDs and waivers. Then there's one person expediting that line, moving them through with one person conducting the test drive. Again, it's going to depend on how you're set up. If there's one central location and all the cars are parked there and they're taking off from there, depends on the staffing that you're going to need. Or if it's a by each OEM or dealership, then just ensuring that they have those people dedicated representing their own takeoff area. Next slide, please. Also, reach out to the closest dealerships or OEM representative 3 weeks in advance to establish the protocol. Again, just ensuring that you guys are aligned on the setup, how it's going to flow, that they have the right staffing, that you have the right staffing, whatever it may be. So nobody assumes somebody else is covering something and then you fall short, because I know people will be very disappointed then if they come and they're either waiting forever or they can't test drive cars. Have pre-printed directions to the dealerships with the designated contact if applicable as well. So afterwards, obviously, for all the OEMs and dealers, they're hoping to generate leads out of this so that after consumers test drive a car, and if they're really sold on buying or updating the current EV that they have, that they know where their current or closest dealership is a big recommendation. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And then ensure the test drive participants have completed the waiver in advance of reaching the dealership. So this is in there because some places have had the dealerships literally right around the corner. So instead of having their own tent, or some of them are at dealerships, some city captains will hold events at a certain OEM's dealership. So again, that's just more referring to that, but some places are at another business or not right next door to a dealership. So next slide, please. All right, so during the test drive, remember, it's likely that this could be someone's first time driving an electric vehicle. Help them draw the comparison with an ICE vehicle by pointing out the quietness, the lack of vibration, the torque, the rapid acceleration with no jerking or shifting, responsiveness of the throttle, and regenerative braking. The perception from a lot of people is that if they've never driven an EV before, is it's a golf cart, and it's completely opposite of that. So people are amazed and surprised when they get in one. the quietness to feel, the like I said, the torque and the horsepower, just the get up and go that they have, and they're very pleased with it. So just make sure you kind of explain all that to them up front, let them know what to expect, and so they're not totally surprised when they get in the car. If you'll go ahead to the next slide, please. Discuss the benefits of electric vehicles, that they are fun to drive, they're easy and cheaper to fuel, they're reduced maintenance cost, reduces air pollution and carbon footprint, reduces dependency on foreign oil, and share with the participant why you guys love driving electric vehicles and why you're passionate. Obviously you're taking a lot of time out to plan these events, and they're growing every year, one in number and also in size, which is great to see. But just explain it to a lot of people, because a lot of people are more curious nowadays than they are necessarily educated about them. So that's why they're there, is to seek to learn, to understand. Next slide, please. All right, so go over the vehicle specifications with them as well. Encourage those riding with the participant to review their vehicle specifications. While it's likely the driver will ask more general questions concerning EVs, it will help in answering some of the model-specific inquiries as well. Each model has obviously some of the standard features are in the same places as maybe a nice vehicle or another EV, but just make sure that they know truly where, especially the basic, the windshield wipers are, turn signals, all those kind of things, how to adjust their seats properly so they're comfortable, they know how to adjust their mirrors and everything before they start driving. One, just for the safety, but two, it just also educates them and shows them where it is on each specific vehicle. Go ahead to the next slide, please. And how to deal with dealers. So again, start early, engage the dealers about participation in your local ride and drive as soon as you can. When approaching a dealer about a sponsorship or participation with your ride and drive event, highlight the potential traffic this will drive to their dealership and what leads they could generate from this. Obviously to generate sales afterwards. Communicate the event specifics and have a follow-up plan. Should an event schedule or specific change, be sure to let the dealer know as soon as possible so they can adjust accordingly. But reach out to the dealers right there. You don't want to reach out to dealers that are further away because, I mean, there are people that drive, but there's so many more events now and some are right on top of each other. So if a dealer is going to participate, they're going to go to the one that's closest to them. As one for convenience and timing, and a lot of these events are on Saturdays and Sunday, so that's during their busy time during the weekend. But yeah, just reach out so they can plan ahead and just let them know how you guys really want to partner with them now and in future events too down the road to help support and within the community. If you'll go ahead to the next slide, please. So ride-alongs. Keith?
Yeah, hi there.
Okay, there you go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm just going to touch on ride-alongs.
Oh, hi. I'm sorry, Keith. I was on mute there. Can I just hold you up for 1 second? But I wanted to issue a poll to everyone before we get started on ride-alongs. So this poll will just be a question for everyone on the webinar today. What will happen is your screen will change to the question, but don't worry about that. It'll go back to the presentation after everyone has submitted their response. Okay. All right, great. 62% have said yes, they have reached out to dealers. That's fantastic. 26% no, but I plan to. Well, hopefully this will help you get a head start and help you with your questions. Looks like we have 82% voted. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. Yeah, so we have 61% said yes, they've reached out to dealers. 27% no, but I plan to. We're happy to answer all of your questions during this webinar. 9% not sure if I want to yet. Hopefully we'll convince you. All right, so I'm going to close this poll and we'll get back to Keith. So just a quick introduction. Keith is a ride and drive expert. He is a team member with Electric Car Insider Magazine, who specializes in ride and drives. And he's going to speak to doing ride-along. Thanks, Keith.
Oh, thank you. So the first thing I do when I do a ride and drive in a vehicle is just welcome to the people to the vehicle, introduce them to the vehicle, hit on manufacturer make. Most times people are unaware of which vehicles are out there, besides possibly Nissan, Tesla, the ones that they've heard of. Dispel any rumors or misconceptions of hybrids versus PHEVs or electric vehicles. I usually, when I start driving, is when I introduce them to the MSRP on the vehicle, kind of true cost of ownership, what rebates or incentives are available to kind of get them thinking in that mode that this is an affordable vehicle for themselves. And then along the way, just show them that as we're driving that, they've already touched on this, but they're quieter and EVs are just like driving a car. And then usually towards the end of the ride, I try to find out what their stumbling blocks are. Everyone comes to one of these events with their own preconceived ideas or what they're looking for. And if you can kind of get that out of the way, maybe it's charging, maybe it's road trips, maybe it's just finding the right EV for them. So if you have truck people come to an event, what EV might fit a truck person, or if they drive minivans, know what vehicles are similar to minivans or which minivans are available out there. And then, just remind them at the end of the little 5 to 10 minute event, that there is an EV for everyone out there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Keith. And just a reminder, a ride-along specifically refers to when an owner of a vehicle or the dealership representative is driving the electric vehicle, but your attendees are in the passenger seat or in the back seat. So that's what a ride-along is. They're getting the feel of the car, but they're not actually behind the wheel. All right, I can go next slide, please. So our second guest speaker is also a ride and drive expert and can give a few more tips about how to, the process of actually conducting the ride along and some important tips. Elaine? Okay, it looks like Elaine may be having some audio difficulties here. So I'm just going to go through the slide for her. So it's important to keep the flow going. Plan ahead. So when you're doing a test drive, for example, a lot of people will have time slots for to sign up so that they'll come back at 1 p.m. to do their test drive. Similar. You can do a similar procedure for ride-alongs, have people sign up for time slots, and also have several people being able to walk people to the vehicle and walk them back. Make sure that there's enough vehicles and enough people so that everything is flowing smoothly and there's not a huge backlog. Make sure all seatbelts are on. When people do ride-alongs, it's the personal driver's insurance that is at stake, when people are in the car with them, because it's their personal vehicle in many cases. So you want to make sure everyone in the car has their seatbelts on before you get going. Another important thing is tailor the drive to your passengers. A big selling point of EVs is the instant torque, that jolt right when you first start driving. However, if you have an older passenger or just an anxious passenger, they may not appreciate that. So get a feel for the best experience for your passengers. Consider not allowing car seats. They take a lot of time to install and can be a hassle. If you do want to have a car seat in there, consider bringing your own and just leaving it in the car. Also, no pets. So this is a safety concern. You don't want a pet to somehow interfere with your driving and cause an accident on the road. And you also want people to be focused on the driving experience rather than the pet. And last tip, keychains on belts should be removed beforehand. So you don't want people to leave things in your car. Again, it just becomes a hassle. So make sure they leave as much as they can outside of the car. All right, so we're at our Q&A. If anyone has questions, you can use the control panel on the right side of your screen under the questions tab and just type in a question. We'll go ahead and answer it here. So first question, is there anything we need to do for insurance if individual owners are bringing their own cars? So the important thing to remember here is if it is a driver with their own car giving ride-alongs or even allowing people to drive their car, they are only covered under their own insurance policy. So make sure that they check with their insurance policy to see what's covered. You know, if they're driving people around and they get into an accident for this event, you know, make sure their insurance covers them. They need to find that out for themselves beforehand. Okay, and then I have another question here. Please confirm that plug-in hybrids are welcome at our ride-and drives. Yes, plug-in hybrids are welcome at ride-and drives, as well as full electric vehicles. Also, at many events, a lot of people bring electric scooters and buses, so you don't have to limit yourself. And Heather, do you want to explain a little more what OEM stands for?
Yes, the OEM is a manufacturer. So Nissan's an OEM, Chevy, Ford, Tesla, that is an OEM.
Great, and then there's a related question here. People are wondering, should they contact a local dealer first or an OEM?
There are two different levels of participation. So most of the time, people will contact an OEM if they're looking for a larger sponsorship. Maybe if they're close by with the headquarters or something, they will do that. But typically, most people will just contact a local dealer to represent an OEM there. So they'll reach out to Nissan dealerships, Chevy dealerships, whoever they, is around them in that area.
Great. And then, sorry to put you on the spot again, Heather. We have a question here about what happens if people have contacted the dealership and they're just not getting a response.
They're not getting a response. If it's a Nissan dealership, you can see the email address below. Those emails will come to Nissan, and we can help facilitate and try to reach out to them ourselves to see, or get our regional people to help push. That is a big thing we're doing this year from all levels to try to get the Nissan dealers engaged. If it's another OEM's dealership, you could try to reach out to them at their headquarters, maybe go there in person, but that's the only thing I could say for another OEM.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Keith, if you're on, we have a question. How do you determine a driver's license is valid? Have you run into this problem before?
We normally just check that it's current, that it's currently up to date. We do also, sometimes we host events in local parks where we'll bring a breathalyzer with us, just in case if there's any issue of intoxication, because we do both. We do ride and drives and ride-alongs. So it's kind of up to the event on which way we're going to go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Looking through the questions here. Okay, so a question, does the person organizing or volunteering at the event need to ride along in the car as well as the dealer or owner? I think not. I think it's just the owner and the attendees is fine, unless, Keith, you've run into something different or have any other comments.
Sometimes when we reach out to dealers, they want to keep their sales representative in the vehicle, and they might have a second or third level of a disclaimer that you need to sign that way. But we welcome, have as least amount of people in the vehicle as possible, a driver and a passenger, either if you're driving or the individual is driving, but keep it as simple as possible because these are new vehicles to most people and they're unfamiliar with them. So there is a learning curve. Less distractions are always better.
Great, thanks. And we have a question. Could you please go into more detail about the staffing to recommend dealers have at the event? So Keith, maybe you know the answer to this. What's the usual number of representatives dealers send to their event?
Normally we have one dealer per vehicle. I mean, is kind of the traditional way, but sometimes dealers will also just drop off 2 or 3 cars as static displays for an event. So you can have people sit in them, they won't actually drive them or experience the car, but they can experience it from a, touchy, feely point of view versus actually driving. Staffing just comes down to how many ride-in drives or ride-alongs you're planning to have. Figure 10 minutes per, rotation. So on a good day, you're talking about 6 ride-in drives or ride-alongs per hour.
Great, thank you. All right, so I think we've gotten to many of the questions. If I haven't answered your question, I will answer it after the webinar, either emailing individually or sending out an email blast with some common questions. This webinar will be recorded, is being recorded, and will be up on the Drive Electric Week website along with the slides for more information. So if you have any additional questions, feel free to use this email address on the slide. You can also email me at kmorgan@pluginamerica.org, and I'll send out that email to everyone in case you have other questions. Thank you, Heather and Keith, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.